And we are live. Welcome to another episode of Unscripted, and I have the great pleasure to introduce Brent Deterding. Thanks very much for joining me. I hope I pronounced it correctly. How are you? Listen, I love to get security professionals on to just have a casual conversation as if we met at a conference show and we talk shop. And specifically what I loved and what triggered this conversation today is that so before we jump in, why don't we just clean up palettes? It's early, and maybe walk me through memory lane, just what you've done, how you got to where you are today. What was your specific journey?
Sure. So I'm a little bit unique amongst CISOs in that I worked for 19 years on the vendor side. Right? I worked for SecureWorks for 19 years, 15 years in operations, 4 years in a global sales overlay role. I've carried a quota, right? I've been on the sales side. And now as a CISO, we're about 11,000 people, a 22-person team, all that comes with being a CISO of that size organization. And I have a soft spot in my heart for vendors. I like vendors. I meet with a lot of vendors. Several hundred last year. I'm cutting that down a little bit this year, and I love being a CISO. It's fantastic. The stress is not a burden, and my satisfaction is through the roof, and that's a little bit unique, honestly, amongst CISOs. It's not exactly common for someone to be like, "I love this. This is great." Yeah, and I post a lot on LinkedIn. I'm pretty transparent guy.
Yeah, absolutely. So that experience working on the vendor side. So let's do the 30,000 feet, right? The journey of having a lot of folks talk about the vendor enterprise relationship through the years and what that evolved to. And because things were different 10, 15 years ago, even 10 years ago. And then it seems like it's contentious a little bit. Maybe because the environment is different, maybe because there's so many different vendors, and then just not as many CISOs in general. And then just talk to me about that relationship.
So one thing that on the vendor side, you have metrics for how much your clients like you, right? A very common one is NPS, Net Promoter Score. I ran an operations center that for several years had an NPS score of 70, 68, 72, somewhere in there, right? Which is damn near cult-like. It's very, I've been invited to a whole lot of clients' kids' birthday parties, right? Stuff like that, right? And we also ran 70% margins, which is crazy high margins for services for an operations center, right? And as part of that, I learned a lot about partnership and working with clients and working with prospects and all that. And I also had a previous experience with implementations. Right after it's sold, go in, you implement it, all that. And so I learned a lot of lessons about relationships, when they start, how long it takes to repair a broken or fractured relationship, what makes mistakes no big deal, what makes mistakes a really big deal, right? A lot of these concepts just get ingrained in you when you're running an operations center, when you get to know. And then on the sales side, it's much the same. It's just at a different point. You're talking to them very early in the whole cycle, whereas I had a lot of experience later in the relationship, right? And even how you end the relationship matters as well. If a client churns, like how you handle that matters. And one thing that got ingrained in me was people matter. Relationships matter. Empathy matters. All of these things make a really big difference because that crisis into inconvenience, right? It turns really bad situations into not the biggest deal in the world. right? And that applies. I've done a lot of incident commander, incident handling kind of stuff, right? Now, it wasn't ransomware, right? Back in the day, it was like the firewall broke everything. But you're talking to someone who is having the worst day of their year, right? Because whatever, and having to partner with them in that environment. So when you experience people through pre-sales, implementations, operations, incidents, when you deal with them when you have data points from all of those points in the relationship, then you learn some things, right? And one of those big things is relationships matter. And that still applies. So I was on the vendor side, I always had very positive relationships with my prospects and my clients. And that was I never had any contention there, right? It was always very natural, whether we did business or not. Like, I always had a very easy rapport with prospects that I talked to. Now, as a CISO, I come and let's say out loud, I love vendors, but there's an awful lot of bad behavior when it comes to outreach. And bad carries too much of a negative connotation. I'm not mad at anyone, but I ignore about 95% of what comes my way. I've run the numbers. Over a 2-year period, about 95% of what I get inbound is just junk. It's copy-paste, it's assuming things that should not be assumed, and I hate, here are the rules that you must jump through and follow in order to be graced with my presence. Like, come on. I'm not doing that junk, right? But my line, because if I didn't have a line, I literally could spend 20 hours a week meeting with vendors. Easily 20 hours a week, right? And I could take advantage. I could not pay for dinner 3 nights a week, no problem. But I don't do that, right? I'm not into that. I had to have a line. I had to have a line to protect my time a little bit, right? Because I have a day job. Like, I have a job to do, right? So do you. So does everyone. And so my line became, okay, I'm going to ignore, from a relationship perspective, it is like being a decent human being means reciprocating effort. So if someone puts effort into me, I will reciprocate that and put it back into them. I'm kind to everyone. That's not a problem. But I had to say, if someone's putting zero effort into talking to me at all, and they're asking me to do something for them, then I'm going to reciprocate. I'm going to reciprocate zero effort. I'm just going to ignore it. And that cut down 95% of what I get. And then I actually overdo that on the 5% that is personalized and has some concept of caring about who I am, what I am, my organization, what I care, any of that, then I reward that. Or I hate the term reward, but I put effort into those relationships that put effort into me. That's a baseline of how I view things. And unfortunately, I think a lot of CISOs have been burned. I think they've been burned they get tired of not being treated like human beings, and as a result, have become very jaded. And I get it. I don't like it, but I get it. And by the same token, like, I get why DGRs and sellers and people, I get why they're jaded too. So I'm trying to be part of the solution by saying there is a better way to go by doing this. And sometimes I'm delivering that message to CISOs, and sometimes I'm delivering that message to vendors. And usually it goes over pretty well. Every now and again it doesn't. Every now and again people feel like I'm pontificating and whatever. And I'm like, well.
And Brent, we're going to be talking about the better way. But before we jump into that, there are 4,000 vendors out there, and the pandemic caused the detachment, I think, from in between among individuals. Added to that, there's a lot of automation tools that are now today being used, which is really destroying any glimpse of effort. You have a sequence that you put in, and then you start getting, and you can see that the most obvious one is you get a connection request on LinkedIn, and then they add you to some automation tool, and it just blasts you like every other day with this long, huge, long message. It has nothing to do with what you do.
Yeah.
And it doesn't stop. It
No.
does not stop until you say stop or you comment. And these automation tools, I think, are destroying a lot of the thoughtful, unique, I guess, tailored, bespoke messages that you put in, or somebody wants to put in, because it almost vanishes into the noise. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of different causes. So just from your perspective, again, what do you recommend? And let's go into kind of the causes and effect here. It's almost like the two sides are reacting to almost, conditions that were thrown at them almost without any control.
Yeah, I'm not. So the flip side of all this automation and all these tools and all that sucks. Yes, but that also means that there's plenty of opportunity for people to stand out. And I think my experience of 95% and 5% is pretty darn accurate across the gamut. Now, I spend very little time clearing out the 95%. That takes me 2 to 5 minutes a day, if that, right? I spend more time responding to the 5% that does, which means that there's a great opportunity for that 5%. And I see this work on a weekly basis with small companies, big companies, like at every stage of growth, I've seen companies do this well. And they can do that. And that looks like a personalized message. It looks like sponsoring dinners or events where CISOs gather. Some of those are crazy expensive. Some of those are crap events. Some of those are good events. A lot of them are pretty reasonable at cost. And I've talked to the CROs and CMOs about the cost and where they spend and all that. And the fact of the matter is that a lot of the cold outreach, a lot of the DGR kind of stuff, a lot of the automation still works. And when you have a cost to acquire of a lead sub $1,000, which is not bad, really, then they're going to keep on doing it. But I think that they should target that to people who are going to resonate with the message, or at least who might. Because
Brent, that's a double click on define the lead. Because the lead is just what? Somebody who just responded, or is a lead is somebody who's qualified, or is a lead?
It's a conversation. Yeah, right. And so I don't have visibility into that. I don't have visibility in any of it, right? But the things that I espouse that are a relationship don't necessarily show up in Salesforce.com metrics, right? Let me give you an example. I subscribe to IANS. It's similar to Gartner, but for information security. I love it, right? They have a conference. They have local conferences. I went to a one-day conference in the fall. I met up there with Lior, the founder of Group Security. I'm not a buyer of Group Security, but I like it. I think security is just not for me. I have been interacting with Lior for 2 years. I'm sitting there, I'm like, hey man, how's it going? We're talking, and it was lunchtime. And I'm like, hey, why don't you come back and sit with me? We're in the CISOs, we're off in a different room. And he goes, oh, I'm a vendor, I don't know if I'm like, it's freaking lunch, come on back. Sat down next to a buddy of mine that I've known for 20 years, who's a CISO for a fintech in Chicago. I said, oh, by the way, Rudy, this is Lior, this is Rudy, y'all should talk. They talked. None of that. At no point was I a metric in Salesforce for grit. They do a great job at forming and nurturing relationships through events, dinners, meaningful interactions, all this. It is not a trick. It's not anything.
But Brent, how do you balance that personal relationship and boundaries with the professional one? And also keep in mind that these vendors are very triggered by revenue, and it's quarterly. So it takes time to establish that relationship. It might take you, as you mentioned, you knew this guy for 2 years, but in the meantime, they got to sell to turn the lights on.
Let me clarify a little bit. When I say relationship, I don't mean long walks on the beach together. I mean,
And maybe that's
yeah.
that's
So
the next level.
honestly, like, I always wanted to define that a little bit better. I'm not talking about, oh, you're my best friend ever. all
No, of
that.
course not.
I'm talking about, like, you treated me like a human being and did 30 seconds of research.
Yeah,
Figure something out.
you're being treated like you want to be treated.
Yes. Just a human being. That's it. The bar is super low. Don't lie to me. Treat me like a human being. Maybe third is don't waste my time. If you're selling ladders and I don't need a ladder, we can be friends, but we don't need to. We don't.
But
need
these
to get a ladder.
vendors, they know everybody needs a ladder, and they're convinced that you needed one. And so you don't know you don't need one, but you definitely need one.
I did, when I was a new CISO. So by nature, it is not within me to just flat out ignore someone. It did not come naturally to me. And so I used to respond.
So you had
like,
to learn
hey,
how to be a bad guy, Brent? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. And I was like, so I would respond, and I'm like, no, I'm not interested, but thank you. And they're like, no. And all of a sudden, I'm arguing with people about why I'm not interested in what they have to say. And I'm like, we don't operate in Google, and you sell stuff related to Google. I don't need it. That's not. Are you sure? Maybe you should talk just to be sure. I'm like, no, I'm pretty
But
freaking.
but you know why, Brent? You know why that is. You know why it's happening.
Do tell.
So because the way it works is that typically the person who reaches out to you is they're like a BDR, business development rep.
Oh, yeah.
And
Hey,
so
metrics.
right. So they are compensated and keep their position, their job,
Yeah.
by how many conversations they can schedule. Whether the conversation has anything to do with anything and leads to anything else, they don't really necessarily care. They
Yeah.
just want to get you on the calendar. And therefore, even though you
Yep.
tell them, listen, there's no opportunity here, their job is to get you in front of
Yep.
somebody else. And so that is, I think that the number one conflict here is that they don't care about the outcome. They care about their outcome, not the overall outcome.
Yeah, people respond to their incentives, and I get it, and which is why I'm especially not mad at DDRs, SDRs, DDR, whatever you call them. And I'm not
DDRs,
mad
yep.
at sellers, but that's one reason I like the platform that I have with LinkedIn and the relationships that it has afforded me, because I get to go to CROs and CMOs and be like, hey, listen, let me tell you what, right? And it's hard because, so they, like, some people think CISO has a hard job. I think CROs have an immensely difficult job. And it's challenging. From my perspective, it's very challenging because you do have revenue targets and you have all this. And the cold outreach does, in theory, work, right? But what I would... So I don't necessarily have the answer to being a CRO and how that works. This is a case where I can point out and be like, so I can tell you what does not work. And it's this. Because what I found is, I think what a lot of CISOs have found is that I'm not going to argue with someone about why something is not I found myself sitting there and my wife and kids are waiting for me at dinner, and I'm arguing with a DGR over a LinkedIn message about why I don't need what they're selling. And I'm like, this is insane. It's insane to ignore my family, to argue with this person who doesn't care at all about me. And that's why I ignore things that are not personalized. And if they're personalized, then I will do that. But I'm also not going to get into a long argument about why I am or am not interested. As a result, I am almost never a buyer. And I put that on the table from the very, very get-go. I'm almost never a buyer, but I'm totally willing to talk because I end up doing, I don't know, 2 to 5 recommendations per month. where things that I don't buy, I recommend to other CISOs in my network, right? Even if we don't do business, doesn't mean that we cannot be civil. And if that helps, it helps if I'm talking to a founder, if I'm talking to a seller, if I'm talking to a DGR, it helps them, giving them a perspective. It also helps me, and this is what CISOs, I think, do not recognize, is that talking to a whole lot of vendors gives you a fantastic viewpoint on the market, and it allows you to either strengthen or weaken your positions. Because what I get to do is I say, hey, I believe X because of A, B, and C. Now, do you know about D, E, and F? If so, let's talk about it, because I might be wrong. Give me the benefit of your expertise and experience that we can translate into wisdom, and that's good. In exchange, I'll give you my perspective on why I care, why I don't care, what I think, whatever. And it's a mutually beneficial arrangement, and it's generally an enjoyable conversation. Like 90-some-odd% of the time, it's an enjoyable conversation, right? So it's mutually beneficial. It's well worth my time. It's well worth their time, or at least that's what people who talk to me say. And it works. But it may not lead to immediate direct business, but it is a longer game, right? And if your focus is a quarterly number, I might not be your guy. If your focus is a longer term relationship, because what I also know is I know that I have sellers and DGRs who have gone to other companies and then call me and they're like, hey, we had a great conversation last August. I'm in a new place. I'd like to tell you about it. Sure, no problem, man. We'll get time. That's fine. And I also know that CISOs carry the vendors that they like. They carry them along. I'm in CISO networks. I'm in Slack channels and all that. And people be, hey, anyone have any recommendation on this topic? And so invariably, someone will pipe in and be, I have used this vendor in the past 3 places and really like them. I can give you a warm introduction. That happens all the time, right? And it's because of relationships. Yes, you have to perform. You've got to do your job. But it is because of the relationships that people say, oh, I'm in a new place. I'm going to bring these people in because I know them. I like them. So
yeah, it sounds like that symbiotic relationship.
It's a longer term game, right?
Yeah. It sounds like the symbiotic relationship where they provide value by showcasing and explaining the kind of the bleeding edge of the technology and the use cases and so on, and then you expand your knowledge set, and then potentially, even though it's not a short game, it's a longer game, but it can rip up some dividends, after the fact, in not so straightforward ways. As you mentioned, you might not be the buyer, but you may be a recommender, plus CISOs move around and may end up in a new company. And then also the vendor themselves, the BDRs, they may end up in a new business. Yeah. And therefore, if they treat you correctly, that being carried over. And then I'm assuming that the flip side, if somebody incorrectly reaches out to you and causes some grief, you have that memory associated with it, and you probably, I would say, doesn't it leave like a bad taste in your mouth for the company overall?
Nah.
Not so much?
It's very mild, right? Like, I don't remember, because, again, it's...
Brent, you can't say it's very mild, because they're going to continue doing this. You should say it as you're devastated. You're never going to do business with them again.
I'm not mad. I'm not... These people have a job to do. They have metrics that they got to do.
You're very kind, Brent, because a lot of people would say, "Oh, I've never done business with them again."
I can't talk about empathy and then be like, "Oh, these people have ruined my." Come on, man. The only time I get a little bit annoyed is when I accidentally answer a call. This is invariably how it happens. If my phone rings and I look at it and it says, oh, potential spam, whatever. But sometimes when I'm driving, I don't get out my phone, I just see a call, and I just answer the call. So if I'm driving in downtown Chicago traffic, and someone calls, and they know nothing, and they want to sell, and I'm like, no. And they won't, and I'm like, I'm trying to be kind. I'm like, no, I'm not interested. Thank you. Appreciate it. Nope, not at all. Not a buyer. nope, nope. And they keep on going. I'm like, ugh! Like, that gets a little irritating. But the only time, I think in my 20 plus year career, almost 25 at this point, I think I've only been legit mean to 3 people. And all of those were when they like double and triple down on integrity issues. I will go nuclear. I will get mad and be a little bit mean if it's an integrity issue. If you are just outright lying and I know you're lying and I call you on it and you still double down and then you triple down.
Do you remember,
I'm gonna smash
out
you.
of the 3, can you, without divulging too many of the details, do you remember which one it was? Like what it was?
So one of them was an interviewee I had many years ago, and they were claiming that they had at the time in like early 2000s, CCIE security was like crazy hard to get and crazy well respected, and they claimed that they had it and they knew nothing. Like they didn't know really basic network stuff, and they kept on going down, and I felt that they needed to learn a lesson, so I ground on them pretty hard. The other was a couple of years ago, I had someone reach out to me, and they said, hey, I was a new CISO, and they sent me an email, and they're like, hey, our companies did business together a couple of years ago. I wanted to talk to you about new stuff that we have. I'm like, huh, okay. So I asked my right-hand guy, I was like, hey, do you know about them? And he's like, no, I have no record of, I've never heard of them. I'm like, okay. So I replied, and I'm like, hey, happy to talk, but I don't have any record of you. And they're like, oh, looks like we had an opportunity to do business in 2016, but it fell through at the last minute. But in the spirit of partnership, I'd like to offer you a free consultation about what our offerings are. And I was like, you're being really deceptive. You lied, and you're being deceptive, and that's not cool. And dude, like, double down. And I was like, no, really? No. Like, I still remember the name. That is one company I remember the name of. And I will not do business.
Deny.
Oh, yeah. I was like, come on now. But that's like a pretty hardcore integrity issue, right? That's not a mild, like, oh, hey, I'm curious about... no, you're not. At least on the initial outreach. If we're talking, there's an inkling of a relationship. You have put some effort into me, and I've put some effort into you. We can have that conversation. That is normal and fine and great, right? It's just when it's the initial outreach, hey, will you do something for me? It's like, I don't know you, and I get 20 people a day asking me to do stuff for them that are complete and total strangers. So, I'm sorry, but no. No.
So, listen, how do you navigate the vendors always come up and say, hey, you don't know you need this, but you do.
Yeah.
Henry Ford said that if you ask people what they want, faster horses. Is that any real claim that they know what you need, or potentially you're running around busy and you don't have time to really figure things out?
Yeah. There absolutely are, right? Because here, I'll give you one example. It used to be it is presently the biggest line item in my budget, which was a 3-year deal that I came into. I think it's a bad way to do things, okay? But everyone knows that this is just what you do. So I work with a tech scout company, and they let me know about crazy new innovative things. And they brought something to me, and I was like, no, I trust them. So if they bring it to me, I'll go, yeah, I'll take a look at it. Sure, that's fine.
Do you mind just explaining what... Do you mean to cut you off, but just explaining what a tech scout is? Because I don't know if people are familiar with that.
Sure. So a tech scout, they exist to look for things that Gartner or IANS or whomever is going to be talking about in 2 years, right? So it's crazy new, very innovative stuff that people have not yet really thought about,
So like
right?
emerging tech?
Yes. Yep. And they bring it up, and I think it's great. So they brought me something, and it was like a totally different way of looking at things, and it happened to resonate really hard because I was like, if I did this thing, if I started a company to replace this thing, this is what I would do. And they were like, yes, that's exactly what we did. And it is 90% less expensive than the number one line item on my budget that I found because of a tech scout that I trust, right? So there again, relationships matter.
But
Relationship with my VAR my reseller is awesome. The tech scout, I'm part of CISO networks. So if CISOs or fellow CISOs in my network, and I'm in Slack channels of 700 of them and junk like that. I also participate in the Israeli Startup Advisory Network, so I learn about brand new startups through them, through tech scouts. I have no shortage of innovative ways of looking at things. Now, some of it I'm like, and some of it I'm like, but it's always innovative, right? And so by making time to meet with those people, I get exposed to a whole lot of stuff that has had substantially tangible positive benefits for me. So yeah, absolutely I do that.
But I would say, Brent, you're not the norm because sometimes it's difficult to pull the trigger on brand new technology that's unproven, they don't have a lot of customers, and then you definitely don't want to buy something and then have it blow up because it's like, even Gartner, right? There's all these emergent tech and so on. They tell you maybe you should wait until it's more mainstream and the
Right.
technology is proven. How do you balance that out? But yeah, it's 90% less, but you already have it budgeted for tried and true technology that's maybe 100%.
Yeah. So
You're not going to get fired from renewing that, but you may lose your job because you pulled the trigger on a really innovative, unknown technology. So how do you balance that?
two things. First, there's no harm in being informed, right? And second, it matters what it is. It matters about your organization, and it matters what the savings is, right? I am perfectly comfortable with that choice. There are other things that I would do on a very trial kind of basis, or I would do on a design partner kind of basis, right? Where it's super cheap, and I'm just gonna try. And if it blows up, whatever. And if it works, hey, cool. Now that 90% savings thing, that happens to be one that, like, if they go away, I still own the data. Like, it's still my data. It's still my stuff. I don't lose anything I don't lose anything hardcore because of that.
So that's Brent, that's of a very specific case where you hedge your bet. So the data where you own the data and then you evaluated the solution that if they go away for whatever reason, there's still the impact on you and the organization is minimal.
Look at it this way. I'm not going to go with this startup to replace Microsoft. Oh, what we use for email, Office 365. Oh, Joe Blow's startup can... Yeah. But there's other stuff that is like pretty cool, innovative stuff that maybe isn't... If it goes away, it's okay. Whatever. And again, being informed doesn't hurt anything, right? Because if nothing else, then I can look and I can go to my current vendors, maybe they're bigger or better, and be like, hey, listen, you need to innovate. You need to do this, right? Either way, I'm dramatically better informed, and it didn't cost me anything. And if I want to, then yeah, I can pursue that, because not everyone, not every environment is going to pursue those things. Now, think of it this way. Some larger, like, big environments have a dedicated screw around and find out budget, right? They're like, yeah, maybe this works, maybe it doesn't. We're going to try it, right? And see what happens. And some smaller orgs, maybe they can't do that, right? But even if I don't buy it, I can talk to them, I can give them my feedback, and I can help them understand the market better, understand my perspective, and understand their product better. Or design their product better. And if I want to do a design partnership, I'm not replacing anything necessarily, but I'm trying something brand new to see if it works. That it's valuable to all involved, but again, it all starts with having some inkling of a relationship. I don't just go find startups to talk to and go try their stuff. That's not my jam, right?
Speaking of which, Brent, so you mentioned most times you're not a buyer.
Right.
And the times that you are a buyer, walk me through the process of scouting for technologies. You alluded to that already, but walk me through your buying process of what that looks like.
Sure. Different CISOs feel differently about this. Me personally, based on the fact that I like talking to vendors, and so I run all vendor relationships
So Brent,
through me.
I would love that. So if you can say, this is what I do,
Yeah.
and also just generally from you talking to your peers, what do they do, like in general? I love that.
Other CISOs do not meet with vendors like I do, at all. Most CISOs that I know do the Heisman to vendors. They ignore them, they don't respond, they don't proactively meet with vendors at all, unless they have a specific need. If they have a specific need, then they go out and do it. And fine, and that's when they leverage their network and resellers and all that stuff. I wish more CISOs did that, but very often how it works is I run all the vendor relationships through me. If we're going to buy, then I involve my team, right? And I am the economic buyer. I'm the ultimate decision maker. I own my budget, right? My team, or whatever the team may be, owns the technical decision. I spent 20 years with lead in my title, but I'm not technical anymore. I let them do that. And then it's not about my comfort. At that point, they're the ones who have to use it and leverage it. So then it's about their comfort. And if the vendor can make them comfortable, then if it makes sense, I'll make the business case and I'll justify it.
This is top down. Is there any case where that your team brings the solution to you?
Other CISOs operate almost entirely in that manner. I do not. Now, I am very willing to, and if my team does bring me something, that's just fine with me. But in my environment, that's not how it works. Probably because I meet with so freaking many people that's just what works for me. Other people do that though, which is why deputy CISO, director, whatever, should absolutely be a persona that you go after. And that's why vendors, this is the other problem. And this is less outreach and more sales. Vendors very rarely appreciate what matters to different types of CISOs. They don't realize that there are types of CISOs, and they don't necessarily realize what environment they're talking to. Availability is a really big deal in my environment, right? If the call centers go down for an hour, we lose revenue. If the rest of the company goes down for a week, I'm not saying it's a good idea, but it's less certain, right? Availability really matters. Same thing for manufacturers. Manufacturers are like this too, right? Whereas if you're running a website, or if you're a bank or something, then maybe you care a lot more about confidentiality or integrity or whatever else, right? Understanding the environment, also understanding the maturity of the program, where they are, where they're in, are they recovering from a breach, are they, like, all that stuff matters, as well as what type of CISO you're talking to. There's a bunch of different types. There's anywhere between 3 and 7 depending on the model, right? I tend to like 5 different types of CISOs. Understanding all of that makes a really big difference, right? Massive difference. But further, I care about different things than my director does. He looks at things differently than I do. He has a different lens. Understanding who the heck you're talking to and what moves the needle for them is key, because I often talk to vendors where I lay all this stuff out for them. I'm like, this is who I am. This is what I care about. This is blah. And then they sell to me, I'm an engineer, or I'm a pen tester, and I'm like, I get all that. I can grok it, but like, you're going like this, right? And it's very important to realize the persona that you're talking to, which again involves some level of research and some level of preparation and understanding. Here's a classic one, right? Oh, we can save you time by cutting alert fatigue from 700,000 alerts or 70,000 a day to 700 a day. Doesn't that sound awesome? And I'm like, no, not at all. I don't deal with that. I deal with 5 to 10 a day. It takes one person an hour a day. I don't have alert fatigue. Not a pain point. Oh. Huh.
Then you will. One day.
Yeah, and I'm like, not a problem. Right? And I don't even care. Maybe time savings doesn't move the needle for me because there's not that much time. Or, they threw a stat. And I'm like, one, I think that might be bullshit, but maybe not. But either way, it's okay, so I can save 40% on 3 hours a week. Is that worth $200,000 a year? Probably not, right?
So you find the vendor, and then what's the process of, let's say you narrow down to 2-3 vendors that you know are potentially a good fit for what you're looking for. Do you eval all 3 of them? Do you test them out? What's the buying process, and maybe the negotiation afterwards for price? Talk to me about that process.
Yeah. Personally, I don't like doing POCs and POVs. I think that you can find out what you need during the sales cycle well enough. Different people feel differently about that. And again, at the end of the day, I'm not the one pushing the buttons, so my team has to do it. So if my team wants a POC, POV, we'll do that. And then my philosophy on price negotiation is fair to all involved, right? I know the margins of various things. I know what I can get. I know how to sell it to the regional director or the CFO or whomever. I could bleed my vendors dry if I wanted to, but I don't want to. Now, I don't want to pay list either, right? But there is a happy middle ground where where it's working out for all involved. That's where I want. That's really where I want to be.
The flip side of it is that it's a good negotiation when everybody's slightly unsatisfied. So they're almost the flip side of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a vendor also ask me, like, so are you going to send this out to RFP? And I was like, oh, good God, no. No. I was like, no. I was like, I like you, man. I'm not doing that to you. And he started laughing. I was like, I've been on that side. I know what a pain in the butt that is. And they're like, do you have a procurement team? I'm like, no. And all they do is bleed you dry. I'm not looking to bleed anyone dry. Now, give me I know your margins. It's end of quarter. It's end of your fiscal year. I looked, right? I know how this works. And, when we were talking, you told me you already met your number. So you're into accelerators. So I know what's going on here. Come me a deal, man. Come me a deal, and tell you what. Let me talk to your marketing. I'll do a case study. If this works out the way that I expect it will, I will be a referral client. I'll do all this, but you got to hook me up on price. And then they do that. And then again, it's good for them. It's good for me. I get to be a good steward of the resources. And the end result of all of this philosophy for me is I return money from my budget to my company. Now, I don't get that until some contract expire, but I'm giving money from my budget back to my company, being, hey, this is cool, but I don't need this much. Thanks. Appreciate it. That's also
it's interesting that the philosophy is also, I believe, just my opinion, it's very correct to not bleed dry the vendor, because the balance of power also changes once you sign the contract. You don't want to be in a position where they feel they're not making any money, and they're
right,
because the service you're going to get will be in line with that. And eventually, you have to have some sort of symbiotic. They also have to stay in business. The last thing
Yes.
you want to do is for them to be out of business.
Right. And so, and when I'm working with marketing to do a case study or a referral, and when I know someone on the board, and I talk and have a great relationship with the CRO, and all these people, then I know that if there is any issue, I know that they're going to show me love, right? Because I go, hey, and they're going to be Johnny on the spot with fixing it. And that works. It works for me. It works for them. It works for all involved, right? And then I also get to say, here's what's important to me. Here's what's not. And I get to talk to, I'm willing to talk to their marketing team. I'm willing to talk to their product managers. I'm willing to talk to all those people. But opinions differ, but here's what I care about. And here's why I care about that. And here's how I would sell to me. Now, here's how I would sell to other CISOs. Here's all this kind of stuff. And again, it's a mutually beneficial relationship that costs me ultimately very little time and results in a win for all involved. Works for me. And again,
Brent,
it's all relational.
it is. And so we're running out of time, but I have one more question, and this has been phenomenal. You mentioned during the conversation that you work with partners like a reseller on a regular basis, and you have some go-to. Talk to me about the kind of the relationship of how that works, and do they have the ability to bring technologies to you for review or for your opinion, and what's that relationship look like? Because you already have trust there.
Yeah. I came in and we already had a reseller. And I met the guy, and I really like him. In fact, I'm going to lunch with him in an hour and a half. And I like the guy. I could negotiate my own stuff. I know the margins. I know how all this works. I can negotiate my own stuff. That's not an issue. But I value that relationship. They bring me value because, one, it is a good check to make sure that I'm getting a good deal, right? Because they know what the margins are. They know better than I do what the prices are. Now, he gets a cut off top. I'm okay with that. Also, if I have a problem, then that's one more lever. That's one more lever point that I can pull it. Because, again, he knows all my vendor relationships. He knows how much business I'm doing with all that. And he's like, hey, man, no. Brent is fantastic to work with, and you need to fix this for a vendor. I've not had that situation, thankfully. But if I need it, it's another lever. So I'm confident I'm getting a good price. If I need to fit within a budget, then I say, hey man, I need this to be here, and then we'll figure. That works too. So there again, it's a mutually beneficial relationship. And yeah, if I need something, like example, I needed a PAM solution. I reached out to my CISO network. They gave me two or three names. I went to my reseller. I said, hey, I need to talk to these two vendors sometime in the next week. Make it happen. And he goes, all right, boom, done. And then also when we were doing the POV, I could tell him, I'm like, hey man, they're not getting it done. I need more responsiveness on this. I'm moving quick. He's like, done. Goes and takes care of that. So if I need information, if I need to send a message, if I need a problem resolution, if I need a budget, if I need whatever, he takes care of all that stuff for me. And so as a result, he's valuable.
So Brent, you lied. You do have a procurement department. It's just really...
I have a VAR. I have a VAR.
It's you outsource that function.
No, okay. I suppose that's fair. Look, there again, I'm not looking to bleed anyone. I'm looking for a deal, granted.
But who is not, Brent? You're just doing
a beneficial deal, right?
Yeah, you're just doing your job. You're supposed to be looking for a deal. I
have to be a steward. I have got to be a steward of the resources that I've been trusted with.
Absolutely. So listen, this has been phenomenal. I would love to just part ways with some positivity. We've really provided value in this conversation today because if any vendors are listening, you basically outline very specifically and succinctly what do you expect when somebody reaches out to you, and then what the vendors can expect in return.
Yeah.
Any other positive notes that we can take over? Because again, the sky's not falling, from a cybersecurity perspective, and also there are businesses, there are vendors out there making money. They're selling, even though there's a bit of a contentious relationship. Eventually, things kind of progress, and then maybe you progress the wrong way, but maybe we're doing, just by having this conversation today, I think we're making an impact to change some of that.
So, just take, I know this is hard, because again, I've carried a quota, I get it, but set aside, or at least a part of you, set aside the PO, the number, the whatever else, and just treat people like human beings and have some empathy. And that goes both ways, right? Have empathy for the seller and the job they're trying to do, and have empathy for the CISO and what they're trying to do. And it works. And I have conversations every single week with vendors, all different vertical sizes, areas that are fantastic. I enjoy the conversation. And it seems like they enjoy the conversation too. And it works. Being kind is never a bad thing. If you're just freaking kind to people, it works.
And I think it works across all industries and just in general in human relationships.
Being kind works across all of life. It's not hard. And quite honestly, I have these great little crow's feet or whatever because I smile all the time because I like interacting with people in relationships. And it's good. And there's no downside. It takes minimal effort, and there's a lot of upside, and come on, man. Unless you are back-to-back meetings, unless you're a seller and you're back-to-back meetings with prospects and beating them up with a stick, you have time to invest in relationships. And I have never met, even the sellers who kill it, I've never met them having back-to-back meetings all day, just signing POs every day, all day, right? In fact, the best sellers I know absolutely put time into forming relationships. And again, that doesn't mean we're going to hold hands and walk on the beach. That just means that we're reasonable and mutually
Even though,
respectful.
Brent, there's nothing wrong with that, even if you did hold hands and go be on the beach.
That's right.
Last thing I'll ask you, Brent, what's the easiest way for people to reach out to you, to know more, to get advice, and then potentially also... Okay. What's your LinkedIn handle?
I'm all over LinkedIn. I post about 4 times a week. As I have scheduled posts that release 4 times a week. Yeah, and I'm not always necessarily right, but I always take the feedback and the comments that I get and use it to refine my message. Because just like on the sales side, I'm selling all the time too, right? I'm selling my ideas on LinkedIn. I'm selling my philosophy. I'm selling my approach internally, externally, wherever. And I'm always looking to refine that and get better at what I do. And just like sellers, I have 2, 3, 4, 5-minute talk tracks on given topics that I refine over time, right? And I change those as the situation changes. So, yeah, hit me up on LinkedIn, and we can engage. If it's personalized, I will respond.
Absolutely.
That works right now. if all of a sudden I get, God, I had a post blew up a couple days ago. My most popular post ever, 550 some odd thousand impressions. And I have every single person who commented in anywhere near a positive way or sent me a message that was in any way personalized, got a response. In fact, that may be why you reached out.
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, and I was like, all right. And
probably.
That was last night. You're like, hey, can we do it? I'm like, yeah, sure, that's fine. We can talk. So...
Yeah. Absolutely.
I'm a fairly approachable guy.
And I hope this was enjoyable, Brent. That's supposed to be enjoyable. Yeah. We provided value to the viewers. And thanks again for taking the time to chat. Allow people to bring out to to live your post and just see who you are and what you're all about. And until then, thanks for all those who join us today. Stay safe, online as well as offline, and also be kind.
Yeah.
That's,
right.
I guess, the last message I will provide. And until then, until the next episode, I'll see you soon. Thank you very much.
Sounds good. Thank you.